Welcome to this session of Remembering John Parakos. I'd like to introduce and thank you for being here today. Anne Bradney. Anne is the founder and the director of the Radical Aliveness Institute, mainly out of LA, but she teaches all around the world and brings her innovations and approach to healing. So, Anne, thanks so much for being here today.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, great. Hey, so with John to turn 100 this year, if he were with us in his body, we're just doing a bit of a catch up on some of you that knew John and experienced him over the years. I mean, he could be a challenging, polarizing, as well as brilliant personality. So this is a very personal view. So please just speak how you want and whatever comes to your heart, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to.
Great, thanks. So fill me in. How did you come across John? How did you come across the core energetics work?
Long story short, I was a drug addict, alcoholic mess of a human being. And I got sober. But before I got sober, I was doing a healing program. And in that healing program, somebody came in for a weekend and did a weekend on core energetics. And I just remember thinking, this is it. I got to do this. In the meantime, I got sober and went and applied to be part of the school. And the person who interviewed me was John Parakos. I think I wasn't very, I hadn't been sober that long, but I was on a healing journey and I was absolutely sure I wanted to do this work. And what I remember about that interview with John was, he said, you have to go to graduate school while you come to this program. And I said, I'm not going to graduate school. If I wanted to go to graduate school, I'd go to graduate school. I want to come to your program. And he said, no, you have to go to graduate school while you do my program. And I said, I'm not doing graduate school. I want to come to your program. And I don't know what it was, but I was absolutely sure that this was the work I wanted to do. And I wasn't interested in going and getting a degree or something different. And maybe I knew that he hadn't asked other people. I mean, I think it was something he was trying to do at the time to make the school more legitimate, but it
When was
wasn't.
that? Oh, sorry.
Probably like 1990, something
Okay,
like
gotcha.
that.
Yeah.
Or 1989, something like that. And I remember him saying to me, and later I figured out what he was saying. I think he was calling me a psychopath. He said, "You just want what you want, don't you?" And I was so naive. I knew nothing. I said, "Yes.
Yes, of
Doesn't
course.
doesn't everybody?" Anyway, they accepted me into the program, and that was it. And that's how I got started. That's how I met John, and that's how I got started in core energetics.
Wonderful. So interesting way to start, butting heads a little bit, which is wonderful.
Which was the history of my relationship with John.
Well, I was just going to say that would have set a bit of a scene. So, what is it that you kind of remember from your relationship with John?
At the time, what I remember, my relationship with John changed a lot over the years, but at the time when I was in the school, honestly, I didn't feel safe with him. I didn't exactly trust him. I saw that he was a powerful man. And when I look back on it now, I see that, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about the world. I mean, I knew a little bit about the world, but I had traveled a bit. But I mean, John was really a man who came from his time and place. I mean, he grew up in Greece. He was certainly very macho. He was certainly I mean, there's a lot to the way he was socialized that I didn't know anything about. And here I was a young woman, I had been a hippie girl. And in certain ways, I think he was a very complex man, and maybe certain ways that he was rubbed me the wrong way. Like I think he liked very conventionally beautiful women. You could tell they were his favorites. He had ideas about homosexuality. He had ideas about, the perfect body. So there were all sorts of ways that for me, he was difficult. And I also found that if you challenged him, which I did, that he could be very,
strong and intense.
very cutting in ways that were difficult for me. So I didn't feel safe challenging him, even though I did challenge him because that's the way I was. But when I look back now, so I can say that about him, that part of who I didn't feel at home with John, and I could see that there were groups of people that felt just he was like God. And then there were groups of people who were a little
Standoffish.
hands off, and that was me.
Mm.
However, I witnessed things with John that were very beautiful. And I could see he had a huge capacity for love. I watched him do, I'll always remember this one intervention where there was a very, maybe we would now, or then they would call, oh, a difficult person. It was a difficult person. Well, it was a person, but in that setting, he was a difficult person. And I remember he got up and he did something and he was saying something and creating quite a stir. And all I remember is John stood up, opened his arms, walked over to him and threw his arms around him. And this guy just melted. And it always struck me that was such there was power there. And I think I witnessed him having, I think the thing that struck me about John, or that was most meaningful to me about John, was his uh, caring about the world. And there was a way that he conveyed um, that when I later left Core Energetics to pursue what I wanted to pursue, which had a lot to do with working with world and social issues and all of the places that has taken me, I often thought, John is smiling down on me from heaven. Like, John approves of what I'm doing, even though I've left Core, even though I'm, doing something different. John approves. I always felt that because I felt that there was something about his vision and what he was really longing for this work to do, that in whatever way I was moving on with my life was aligned with that vision. But I think that, he was a courageous man. I think he was a pioneer. He was really doing brave things. And as someone who has gone off on my own and done pioneering things, I really feel what it takes to do that, and the kind of pushback that you can get from the world and the position it puts you in. So I have a lot of compassion for him, and then a lot of compassion for the things at the time I really did not like about him. I see now as really coming from his complexity, the time of life that he grew up in, the environment he grew up in, who men were at the time, who a doctor was at the time. I mean, there was all this kind of hierarchical stuff that drove me crazy with John. And I really pushed against. But now I see he was a man of his time, And he was also a man who was pushing the boundaries of his time. He did both.
Mm, mm. So from all of that, and wow, I mean, that's such a richness of insight now, and combined with the experience of then. What would you say was the greatest impact on you as a person, on your personal process that you took away from working with John?
I think in general, core energetics for me, coming from my background, coming out from being a drug addict, alcoholic, coming out from growing up in a way where my feelings didn't, my intense feelings and energy were not welcomed,
Mm,
to stepping into an environment that in many ways did welcome that. And I would say most especially for me, even though now that I've worked around the world, I don't hold things in this way anymore because I see how culture bound the
mm,
philosophy is, very,
mm,
very much coming from a particular worldview. But for
mm,
me, the working with the lower self was profoundly liberating for me. And I kind of remember this feeling of I can find God by going into my hatred. I just can't imagine anything better because there was no way I was going to get anywhere if I didn't have permission to have my hate. So I think that for me was probably the most beneficial, and somehow in the way that I went with it, really finding a place in myself that I just wasn't afraid to see or know anything about myself.
mm,
And what's so interesting was I left core in many ways because at the time I wanted to do something different, and I was feeling disillusioned. All sorts of reasons I left core,
mm,
and went on. And at the same time, I can say, and I think this is the beauty of it, is that the vision of the work was beyond the human beings who were holding it. So
mm.
that the work itself, if I could separate it from the
Individuals.
limitations of the individuals who were
Mhm,
holding it or leading it, it was
mhm,
the work itself that allowed me to liberate myself and have the courage to leave in a way that felt really meaningful and grateful and transformative. So I think there was a vision that came through him and that came through Eva that,
mhm.
like all good visions, they are beyond the personality of the human that is holding them.
Wow, beautiful. On I mean, I'm just taking that in. Thank you. I'm really feeling the effect of that. I mean, it feels like the entire process of physical, emotional, spiritual finding, growing up, and then individuating and creating who you are in the world. I mean, that's so beautiful the way you say it. If I can, is there any individual personal memory you have of John, which was more lighthearted, perhaps more aligned to how you may view him now versus how the experience was at the time?
I remember this one faculty meeting, and actually, the faculty meeting was difficult because I challenged him about homosexuality, and he
Hmm.
he almost killed me. Um,
Yeah, he had some pretty strong views on that, didn't he? I remember talking to him about
yeah, yeah, yeah. But during that same faculty meeting, interestingly enough, both the place where he, let me have it, um, there was some point where I think he had been struggling with being out of contact with his daughter.
that. Hmm.
And I remember he laid down on the floor and we were all around him. and I might be getting two memories mixed up because there were two times something like this happened. Yeah, but I think it was that meeting. And he cried in such a powerful way. And I remember thinking, this man has such a powerful heart. You know, it was like the combination of he could kill me, cut me down, make me bad and wrong. And I still could see that, wow, wow. Like, look at the power coming out of this heart and the impact. And interestingly enough, I have one more thing to remember. In my final year, I think he gave us the very last class. And I remember he hit me really hard on my chest and he said, "You have not even begun to touch your heart." And I was enraged, and everybody was gathered around me. "We love Anne, she's so great." And not that I wouldn't have liked it if he could have told me in a different way. But years and years and years later, I said, he was right. There was so much more for my heart to do than where it was then. So
I
I
mean,
didn't
that was
like the
his
way he
way.
did it, but it was the truth.
Yeah, I mean, that was his way. He was very direct back in those days, wasn't he? I mean, by the time I met him, he softened off a lot. Um, and I keep hearing these stories from you guys. Oh, the Nutcracker, and he would do this and he would do that. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he's a bit of a marshmallow by the time I got to him. So
Oh, that's nice. Yes, I think he had his marshmallow qualities in there somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, look,
yeah.
that's wonderful. Hey, and in your time with the faculty, because you were a teacher for many years, and I think you taught in quite a few of the institutes as well, didn't you? Or was it just primarily in
Yeah,
the
but some of the institutes I taught in after I left.
right,
I
right,
don't
right?
think, yeah, I'm trying to think. I can't remember. I think I taught in Australia and
You
Holland
did. Hmm.
after I left.
Right, right. So you're already starting the Radical
I think, in
Aliveness
fact, I taught
Institute.
in all those institutes after I left. The only place I taught before I left the institute was in Germany.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. So, what was your experience as a teacher of the work then initially?
Being a teacher at CORE,
Yeah.
I loved it. Like, what do you mean?
No, no, I'm just exploring this journey. You know, here you were, as you said, from a hippie addicted person, you know, who was perhaps naive in some ways in the world, into this big journey of self-discovery and the challenges that came to it, and then the graduation, and then taking that into being a professional, and then also being a professional teacher. You know, and more curious as that unfolded for you.
I think honestly, and I've said this to a few people, I came very close to dying when I was a drug addict and alcoholic. And when I got sober,
Mhm,
it literally felt like I was either going to die
mhm,
or I had this whole life waiting for me. And the moment I stopped, my life went. Whew. So, for instance, I think I did another 3-year program before I did core.
mhm,
And then I started core. And it was just, I was like a fish in water.
mhm,
I was a fish in water. And it brought out, I was I was wild. I was unafraid to bring myself. I was a fish in water. I loved it. And
mhm,
so I rose really quickly, to
mhm.
being in a position as a faculty member. And yes, I'm very grateful to CORE for recognizing me, for giving me opportunities, for letting me, learn as much and do as many things as I did. And it was really a beautiful way for me to get started. And then there was a time it was time to go and
Hmm.
expand in ways that I didn't feel I could do there.
Well, I mean, everyone needs to leave the nest in their own way when the time is right, and to recognize it and actioning it is part of that inner truth, isn't it?
Yeah, or some people don't. I mean, some people it's home forever,
Yeah.
but it wasn't home forever for me, so it was right for me to go. But yes, I got a lot of support and validation, uh, and I had a lot of fun, and a lot of challenges. It was a lot of things.
Fantastic. Well, and thank you so much for taking the time today. And I appreciate your sharing these personal experiences and memories, because this is what we want to capture. John was a complex man. He was a brilliant man. He was a polarizing man. And it's wonderful we're getting exactly those views, because that's what helps us understand the legacy that he truly has left us, I feel.
Yeah, and I think I just want to say one more thing. I love that you're getting all these different perspectives, because I think it's part of something that I feel is really not right about idealizing leaders, because it
Mhm.
keeps other human beings from feeling like they can be a leader. And the truth is, it's hard being a leader, it's challenging. We make a lot of mistakes, we have limitations, we hurt people. And all of that was true of John. And at the same time, he left an incredible legacy.
And in many ways, given the establishment of the time and him being a doctor and a psychiatrist, in many ways it was tougher. At least in our world today, you can be and a pioneer, even if you're a rebel, and the world in many ways accepts that, or is more accepting of it than perhaps his position. And as you mentioned, the way of the man in the time was very different. So
Yeah,
uh, I find a lot of respect for him choosing that path at that
I
time
agree.
in our history.
I agree. Very brave.
Mm. Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, that's my intention, is to make sure we get to see and hear more of the man. It's easy to read about his accomplishments, but it's these personal moments and histories and memories that give us some insight, further insight on who he
So
was and
so
his
happy to
challenges.
help. And
Thank
so
you so
happy
much.
to thank John for what he gave me.
Yeah. Wonderful. And look, thank you so much for taking the time today.
You're
We'll be
welcome.
in touch, and no
Okay.
doubt there'll be more things that I want to ask you, if that's okay.
Okay. Oh, sure. Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.